Welcome to Damn Search podcast powered by SRG Plus, expert insights on content creation, AI innovation, and digital asset management. Let's dive in.
Welcome to a Damn Search podcast, and I'm your host, Serge Creator. It's a pleasure to welcome Juan Antonio to a podcast today. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, pleasure to be here, man.
Awesome. Could you start by sharing your journey into video production and your current role at Precision Strategies?
So I actually started out in my early 20s. I started out painting. And then I realized I didn't want to be stuck in a studio the rest of my life. I didn't know how the world worked at all. And so I decided to go into journalism. So I became a journalist, became a reporter and then an editor. And it was from journalism that then I jumped to advertising, because back then video was starting to go online. And I thought, oh, if you can have a trailer for a movie in 2 minutes and tell a story, then I can tell a story in 2 minutes video. So I started this video series just to like kind of workshop the whole thing myself, and then I just got hired by a digital ad agency, and it kind of went from there. I was always a political animal, but I think like once I acquired, like I never worked with a crew. So I thought, oh, I'll go into the ad agency, and these people have money, so I'll learn how to do it professionally, and I did. And then past that, it's like there was like a period where like finally like all of these different disciplines were starting to kind of like come together, like the journalism, the video production, the advertising, all of these things that you learn started. And so I started doing more branded documentaries, kind of focusing more on real life stories for brands, etc. And I was always a political animal. I just thought that politics was really closed off. So I never even tried. I'm like, I'm not gonna go fundraise for a candidate, or like it's not. And then over time I moved to New York, and I thought, well, this is it, because I just don't want to go back to like shooting food, or like whatever we're doing. I started working on this political documentary. I hooked up with a governor's campaign. I just pretty much decided I'm going to go into politics. But I have to say that this like not in a straight line approach has served me really well, because by the time I got here, I had such a broader and deeper knowledge base than people who want to go into politics straight out of college, right? And that's what one industry. So
Very interesting. And do you think this art degree helped you a lot with that?
I mean, so here's the thing. I mean, yes, painting, the creative process of painting
That's right.
it still informs me to this day. Once you've understood that you can stand in front of a canvas and you can go stroke by stroke and find your way through it, then you really learn to trust the process. And so like now when people are freaking out because we don't have every answer, you're just like, chill out. We have all the answers we need right now. Like this thing resolves itself, right? So you can be kind of like the Zen master. But that comes from that practice of like you've like lived it. But college, no. Like I think the newspaper was my university. I'll be
Wow.
totally honest. I think everything else was kind of bullshit. Like I was gonna read those books anyway. I was already going. I was already curious. I was already learning. So it wasn't. No, I don't know, like university, whatever. I was going
Yeah.
through it. When I got to the newspaper, that's when like I just call that my education. Like
Wow.
yeah,
That's awesome. Yeah,
yeah,
I used to study in the University of Fine Art in Poland as well. So what was good about this part for me, not the theory, but actual practical skills, right? So as you mentioned, like as well paintings, and we did 3D and animations and a lot of creative work. So it helped a lot with like business. So this was why I was curious.
yeah,
This creative background that the work you're doing right now, as you mentioned, it was a little bit different than other people that just going directly to the
yeah.
politics, right? Because you have created this background probably. So that's interesting. Let's dive deep into like hottest topic right now. So it's like AI, right? It's everybody talking about it and etc. So you are in creative field. So I'm really curious about your feedback and opinion about that. I will ask you a couple of questions. Okay. So with your experience in video production for campaigns and corporate clients, how do you see AI transforming video content creation? Are there specific tools or techniques you've explored?
I think a big caveat is that when we work in politics, and we work on the progressive side of politics. I think that AI for us, it's a trickier venture to get into,
Mm-hmm.
because during its early adoption period, there is a concern about misinformation. There is a concern about how it is used and deployed. And so it could actually create a backlash for some of our audiences. Just start making videos with fake imagery and etc. You have to be really careful on how you use it, because for us, I think the effect can be easily negative. So that's kind of like the caveat. I think creatively, the first thing that So there's two sides, and I have to say that my partner's a design thinker, and she recently did this whole lecture in London about AI and creativity. And one of the things that going through it with her while she was researching it and all, and she was asking me about how we use it, etc., is that AI is really good at getting things rolling. As it stands right now, it's growing exponentially. So I can't tell you where it's going to be in a year. But right now, as far as creatively speaking and how you incorporate it into the creative process, it's really good at the first stage of putting stuff up on the wall, like getting all your bad ideas out, right? I mean, that's a really difficult, time consuming stage of the creative process, especially when you're doing it for clients. The first thing that suffers, right? You just start going with the first idea or the second idea you had. It's not the best idea. You didn't really think about it, but you got to move on because you got hours that are counting, and you got to keep it moving. It does help with that struggle that you always have creatively when you're being paid for content. How much creative process do you put into it, and then how do you balance that with the fiscal reality of your client's budget, the amount of hours you can devote to it, etc. So it's really good in that stage. I have like this quick story. You can cut it out later. I was working with one of our producers here, and we had like this really fast turnaround project. And we talked to the internal team. They give us what the project is, and we're like, all right. And we get off the phone, and we get back on the phone with just the two of us. And we're like, all right, well, let's figure out quickly what the script for this thing will be. And he starts, while we're talking and trying to like start getting at a concept, he's like typing into like ChatGPT, trying to get like a semblance of a script, right? He just starts reading this script that the program gave him. And I'm thinking in my head, this is bullshit. This is bullshit. I can't use this. This is nonsense. Because AI inherently thinks that the thing that it sees the most is the best thing, which means every cliche is the best thing. AI is the greatest bad writer out there. It's really great for like business communications and etc. because that stuff has the same language and the same jargon and the same, so it feels like a very real document, right? But when you're writing creatively, then the thing becomes a bit more difficult. So anyway, but then suddenly he just reads like one line, and I'm like, wait, stop. Just okay, that line. All right, get rid of the three words in the middle, bring the other two words together. That's it. That's the line the script is going to land on. All right. And then at that point, I'm done with AI. And I funny, like he just kept trying to type the thing. And I'm like, no, dude, I'm done. I'm done. Like let's just start writing this. Like, this is it. This is a great start. Like, let's just keep moving. And I think to me, great. AI is actually really useful in that sense. Now, when it gets into like generative image creation, etc., there's like two factors. The first one that I told you about, which is, how does an artificial image like actually land with your audience? The one thing about, and I learned this kind of the hard way, it was kind of like a wake up call when I started working in politics and I started seeing work being tested and see how it performed and how audiences perceived it, is that I realized that in a political context, the person that you see on the screen is the viewer. That is like embedded in the premise of a political message. I'm never showing you a voter, a person. The viewer will always assume that the person on the screen is them, that image is an avatar for them. When you start getting into generative images, etc., especially, I think this is truer in the progressive side. I think conservatives have a looser relationship. That's not a dig, but they have a looser relationship with all of this, with images, with how you use information, have a thicker skin and like a looser policy. I think on the left, with progressive organizations and stuff and audiences, it's trickier, it's more sensitive. How does the audience respond to that, and how does it respond to like an artificial image? Is like, I don't know, like we still have to see how that sorts out, because human beings are very adaptable. So that's like one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is actually just time. It's like to actually get exactly what you want can be a painstaking process. It's still a clumsy process inherently. Just going from language to image, just if I told you that conceptually we're going to go from language to image, just the leap of that is just, oh my God, that's just like riddled with problems. So there's like, I think there's still, it's growing exponentially, it's improving exponentially. I think this conversation may be outdated in 6 months, for better or for worse. But I think those are like kind of like the biggest issues, right? You do use it functionally for like, it can be really useful when you're storyboarding. In that sense of like, how do you actually grease the wheels of essentially a corporate process? to be able to like you often I have to over explain things to clients who don't have enough experience. You have to kind of educate them through the process, what the process is, what they're looking at, etc. And I think AI can actually help you in that process because you can produce assets faster just to at least be able to communicate the concept and idea.
Oh yeah, like pre-production process, and yeah, as you said, like the scripting. And interesting, the now it's kind of the creative work is coming from actual words instead of like in paintings, you just moving like
Yes.
brushes different ways, like you was moving your hands like this kind of on the screen even, or even when you're painting like this, but
Yeah.
now you're doing just like this, you're kind of sitting and just like putting your brain towards the keyboard, and this is how you're doing the art right now, so with the AI, right, technically. So that's interesting.
Put together like a
Yeah.
new medium. It's like learning a new medium. If you're describing an image with the bias of the computer and the program through words,
Yeah,
through language.
it's interesting. AI is often discussed in terms of efficiency, as we discussed now, but how do you
Mm.
see it contributing to creativity, particularly in branded documentaries and political campaigns?
I think one of the biggest things that we have that are documentaries are always challenged with is like finding a visual metaphor to be able to explain something. And there are some filmmakers that are amazingly good at it. Errol Morris is fantastic at being able to develop a visual metaphor to visualize, a dynamic, to visualize aspects of a story. I find that often lacking especially in short documentary work. And I'm like a big fan and a big proponent of, I call them tabletop shoots. It's just like, I don't care if it's like you're shooting a billiards table and you're using the billiard balls to communicate an idea, go for it, because it's just more exciting for the viewer. It becomes like it's enticing to see someone. A metaphor is an enticing thing. So they say they're great in literature. That's why we use them all the time. It's how the brain works. We're like constantly pulling things together. Just like a visual metaphor enriches your content immediately. And I think AI, because those types of shots are not linked to reality, don't have to be linked to reality, allows you to be able to like then say, oh my God, I do have an idea for a metaphor. I can sit down on the computer and actually pull enough of these shots together to be able to like build this thing out. And I think in that aspect where like the scenario of the shot is controlled, it's clear, it can be minimalized, you have a clear idea of what you're trying to do, that simplification then actually makes generative AI like a really good partner. And I would be able to execute that without any controversy or about how I'm using the imagery. That would be my line of attack when it comes to documentary work and AI.
Lost files, missed deadlines. Sounds familiar? You're not alone. Managing digital assets can feel like a full-time job. Meet SRG Plus, the digital asset management tool built by creatives for creatives. It is designed to eliminate the chaos, streamline your workflow, and help you focus on what really matters: creating. Whether it's sharing your files, using them on your phone, tablet, or desktop, or collaborating with your team, SRG Plus keeps everything in one place, organized and easy to access. No more headaches, no more wasted time. Just smooth, efficient, stress-free asset management. Stop letting your assets control you, take back control with SRG Plus. Try SRG Plus for free today, click below to get started. 100%. And the show is called Damn Search, Digital Assets Management. I want to talk about that a little bit. Can you walk us through a typical video production workflow, precision strategies? How do you manage pre-production, editing, and client reviews?
Let's start with pre-production. Usually what happens is that the internal team comes in with a description of what they want, and then you're like, this is great. Now I really need to talk to the client because I have a bunch of questions that you can't answer. It's really good to speak to the client yourself though, because I think especially when people are trying to communicate something that they're not experienced with, you being in the room and you hearing them allows you to interpret what it is that they're saying. Often people have a hard time articulating what they're saying, and if you're just going literally, you end up a little bit lost. But if you're sitting in front of them, then you can get a sense of what it is that they're actually where they're trying to go, and then you can help get them there. It depends on the budget, but usually there's either a treatment or just a script, or you go straight to a script. And that treatment has, it can essentially has it's literally a treatment, like a breakdown of what the script would be, what the story would be, the concept is. Then often like just a visual mood board, just to give you a sense of what it's going to look like, what the feel is going to be. Once you have the green light on that, I have to say that unless we're doing like a very specific live shoot and we need to like nail something down, most of the time we just do a script, and we don't do a storyboard. We do storyboards when the action merits doing a storyboard, like we really need to nail down how the shots are going to work. If we have special effects, etc., then the thing complicates. But a lot of time when you're working with organizations, you're working with campaigns, you're working, like, the budgets aren't huge, which is actually a good thing. So you try to trim the process down to be, as efficient as possible, right? So you're not going to do boards for like to show someone being interviewed. That's absurd. But yeah, anyway, so that's kind of like pre-production. Usually if we're shooting, I'll hire a production partner. And like I got a couple of producers. I got one producer in particular. It's just like my producer. Like we can rely on that guy for everything. We go out to the field and we shoot, etc. We don't, like, other than me having my own kit, my own camera, but sometimes I'll just go and do something on my own or with a PA because it's small enough and whatever. But most of the time it's a small crew, and we just deal with our production because they have the insurance and they have like, they can, like, we'll pay them, they pay their crew. So like the crew doesn't have to wait to get paid until we get paid, blah, blah. It's just better to just do that and keep everyone happy. So once that's taken care of, like all the shooting, 90% of the time we do the editing here. It's very seldom, like we have to be pretty bogged down with work to get freelance editors. We do, but most of the time we do the editing in-house. And then we have like a team here of 5. Some of us are producer, director, editor. Some of them are like more editor, animators, etc. But then it's usually like a combination of those, of whatever you need to get the product across the line. That's kind of the process. Let's talk about approvals.
I'm curious how you're working with the customers, right? So you need to receive a feedback and get the feedback plugged into the system or something and give it to the team. So curious about that as well.
Yeah, man, you got to pick your fights. You got to be really wise about picking your fights. So there's like 2 things, and I used to say like, oh, I don't think anyone should go into advertising or any of this kind of work when they're young because it kills your spirit. You become practical, right? It's like if you're paying attention, you go up against a brick wall a few times. You get completely demoralized because forces that are making decisions often have nothing to do with efficacy, with what works, there could be internal politics, there could be budget changes, there could be, like, there's like a world of things that affect whether your work is going to succeed, whether it's going to retain creative integrity. And it's being shepherded by people who don't care. They have other priorities, right? And that's a reality. That's an absolute reality. So how do you protect yourself from getting either completely demoralized, or worse, you self-censor? You start predicting what the client will want or will not want to see, so you stop because you're like, I don't feel like taking this fight. Why do the work twice if they're just going to reject it? Over time, you start getting a little bit smarter about like, okay, what are the fights that are worth having? And those fights are like, I mean, you can tell the clients that are more knowledgeable than the clients that are not. You can tell the clients that have trust in your creative perspective and the ones that are just too wrapped up in whatever to like really be paying attention. You start getting a read of the situation. And then my take is that my clients own the work that I do for them. It is their work. They're paying for it. And they can trash it. They can kill it. They can distort it. They can do whatever they want. My job is to give them the best option, and then whatever they're going to do with it, they're going to do with it, So I'm not always, like, if I have a good dialogue with a client, yes, like it's, we'll push back because you're in a dialogue. You're like in a real dialogue. Is this working? Is it not? Why is it there? Etc. And then it's like a real collaboration. If you're like in a trite relationship where someone is buying something from you and they don't know what the heck they're looking at, and you always give them the thing that should be, because I don't think you should compromise your own aesthetics. I think that's really damaging to you. Like, you cannot adopt your clients' poor aesthetics as your own, nor accept it when they really like something that is shit. Like, don't Don't sleep on that pillow. Like, I don't care who likes it. I have a standard and it either meets it or it doesn't. And it can be like my client may love it. I'm still gonna go to bed angry about what could have been, and that works for me. So you learn to let go without compromising your actual standard. That's my,
I love it. That's awesome. And for a large campaign with multiple deliverables, how do you ensure creative consistency across different formats and platforms?
I mean, we're an integrated agency, and I think people say integrated, and rightfully so, like it's an asset, but integration is really hard to achieve in practice. I think maybe it's just like a natural human, like the tendency towards entropy. There seems to be a constant drive to silo off, right?
Hmm.
And so you're constantly fighting that force of entropy, trying to like pull the team together, just these different factions.
Hmm.
And when you're dealing with a communications team and a digital strategy team, and you're the creative element in this thing, and to that you add the client, those are like four different cultures that have to find a common
Hmm.
language,
Hmm.
right? Like a communications team, they do not like uncertainty. They like things the way they were yesterday. A digital strategy team they have a level of metrics that are of metric data that's coming back to them on performance that should be a guiding principle, but cannot dictate your actions either, because then you never break new ground. You never push beyond what worked yesterday. So like
Yeah.
all of these, and then you have a creative team that's just like, could we try something absolutely crazy? Will it work? I don't know. It just seems really good. It's playing really well in the room. Like, and you want to maintain all of those things in a healthy environment, like all of them are needed. So yeah, integration is hard, is kind of my general point there. And then how do you maintain quality? So it is a give and take. I think sometimes what we're doing in creative then starts dictating the strategy, let's say. And so there's a modification, the strategy, right? Because like, you had made this plan and then we arrived and we're like, wait, but you can go about it this way, right? You can do like a 3 video arc and then like serve it this way, and etc. And then the digital team will be like, oh, that's amazing, like, oh, we're going to pitch that. And so like right, there's a give and take. And other times it's like you have to curtail and keeping. It's not, I guess what I'm trying to say is that in reality it's not this just, it would be easy for me to sit and say, it's like, well, you have to like bring everyone together and then everyone does their best and then everything's like A plus, A plus, A plus across the board. And it's not. It means that in order to actually, for the whole thing to be cohesive when you're in multiple platforms, it's not just about whether you're on a vertical screen or whether like, or horizontal or square, or how much text you're going to have in a communication, etc. All of those things have to find a common language. And so when you're kind of developing a concept, and you're going to do it on TikTok and you're going to do it on Facebook and you're going to do it in like just regular ads and etc. In the process, those things you have to find a language, a visual language, actually can all reside and they can all be part of one voice, even if they're singing at different octaves in different platforms, right? They're like, yeah, it is kind of a give and take. Like, you sometimes walk away like you lost something, but I've come to understand that that feeling of loss is it's necessary. And if you edit video, that feeling of
Hmm.
loss, like we call it
Hmm.
killing the baby, because the shot that you worked half a day to get then doesn't really work in the edit, and you're like, oh, I gotta kill it. It's a give and take. Like, you have to maintain a dialogue and a modicum of humility, because at some point you have to also sacrifice something that you really love for the greater good of the campaign.
Sure, for sure. And digital asset management systems are crucial for teams managing large volumes of content. What are the key features or tools you believe a DAM system should offer for video-focused workflows?
Oh my God. I've been having this conversation for the last 6 months, and I feel like I grow white hairs every time I have it. We're in the middle of looking for a digital asset management system that satisfies us. I'm right now, I find myself a bit skeptical about cloud-based systems where I'm
Mm,
editing, and everything is stored in the cloud, because I just find it like I feel like I'm just opening the door for something to go wrong that I cannot control.
mm,
So here's, I think, so like I'm a video director, right? Every time I'm on a shoot, from the moment that I wake up, I am dealing with variables, and my job, to a certain extent, to maintain the amount of variables throughout the day to the lowest amount possible, because I'm trying to contain like the probabilities of something going wrong. And I think if I'm putting all of my footage on a cloud, I'm statistically increasing the probability of something going wrong and me not being able to deliver something on time. And so like I'm highly skeptical about it right now. I'm like, and so what we use for data asset management is essentially it's a makeshift system, right? It's for finished products and clients, we use Frame because their capacity just kind of blew up, I think, about a year ago. So we can just store, and so much of the stuff that we do is just really short. You can store finished pieces there and then have them accessible for a while. That's one thing. I mean, the paid system, our paid department uses Google Drive. We use Google Drive for a lot of stuff. I hate it. It's just not good for video at all. Like it's just awful. So it's not really functional for us, right? That's like in many ways we're an outlier of what works for the rest of the firm in many areas, because video, I mean, files have gone from 1920 to 4K, and now I've got like some of my DPs shooting at 6K. It's a 6K file that I gotta, if I do an interview for an hour, it's a 6K 1 hour video file, right? So like I gotta bring that in, I gotta proxy it, I gotta, just so that I can work with it. But I can't just be moving an hour long 6K file around like it's something, like it's a doc. That's like a thing that's like, moving it, it's like moving cargo. So like you have these realities that are sometimes really hard to explain to our CFO. It's like, I don't think you understand what moving 50 gigabytes of fucking footage online is really like, like the data management system right now, we have like an archive drive that's like, but I can send you like a picture of the back of my computer. So the back of my laptop essentially has like these pockets glued to it, and there's just like drives shoved in those pockets, and those drives like have a wire to like a hub that's also like glued to it. And so it just looks like a science fiction experiment back there. That's how I keep all the working stuff, all the working projects attached and contained in one laptop. But yeah, we back them up. But it's like a Stone Age system, because I'm waiting for something that I feel confident that will not leave me hanging in the worst possible moment. We're looking into it, and I'm probably gonna have to eat it and get into some cloud-based thing. I wish I had something like better for you then, but it probably reflecting more of the reality out there in the market.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, we definitely need to find good solutions for that, for sure. And have you faced challenges in, I mean, it's kind of relate to the question, but maybe you can add something more. Have you faced challenges in organizing or storing video assets, especially when working on complex projects like political campaigns or corporate communication videos? How do you currently address this?
We use Adobe. We use the Adobe suite, right? So we use Premiere and etc. They have this software called Bridge, which is basically an indexing a piece of software, right? Which is not very functional. Like it's just not. I've downloaded it like 7 times, and each time I'm like, oh, I'm really gonna use this to help me out, and I just haven't been able to crack like a real user case where this thing actually does what I need it to do. There's a lot of like stuff that we do manually that would be great to be able to kind of like incorporate into an actual asset management tool. For example, like we do, like you make shoots. I would love to be able to just have the B-roll string outs reside somewhere, right? I would like to, there is like a process in the edit where you're able to like do a select of these are kind of like the shots that I'm going to be using. And I would love to just be able to take that whole thing and put it somewhere and have a more automatic process of doing that and have it be like properly labeled in a hashtagged way that I can then navigate that system by looking for something, and it'll take me to somewhere where this image is, not unlike looking in the Prelinger archives, which are just like, they just have a bunch of hashtags. And if I go in, I'm going to be like Coca-Cola, and then it'll just give me like a bunch of ads from the 50s of like Coca-Cola or whatever. Obviously, like who has time to be like hashtagging your fucking B-roll footage until, I'm really sorry, I curse a little bit, so there's like a lot of F words here accented.
Totally
But
okay. We're crazy people, This is how we express our emotions.
uh, I just kind of feel like we shoot a lot of stuff, and then once you're done with the first edit, it just gets buried. All of this footage gets buried. There's so much like there's so much marketing content that you're producing alongside There's so much. Obviously, you're not going to use one client's footage for another client because that would be pretty unethical. But you can use it for your own work, and you can use it to like actually produce content for the actual firm, who's also active in social media. Who's like those marketing videos are increasingly becoming part of like our order log, right? And so being able to build your own library in a way that's really navigable, and being able to set up that system in a way that's not all time consuming, because I don't have the budget to just have an assistant editor just logging in hashtags all day into a string out of footage. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Like I honestly, like I'm saying it out loud now, and I'm like, I could use AI for that.
That's right. So this
You
is
know?
the idea that possible to implement. It's basically indexing the files, right? That AI will
Yeah.
put just some sort of metadata for the file that easy to find, right? When you will plug in some prompt, and he will give you some results based on your prompt. This is something that can be useful, probably.
Yeah, and especially for documentarians, you're constantly looking for shots that relate, right? Like I don't know who this person was, but I was looking at somebody's workflow, and they painstakingly would hashtag their footage in Premiere Pro using the Dublin Core metadata.
Mm.
And they would like just hashtag everything so that they would literally go through like this large bits of footage. And when they were actually editing, they would just be like constantly typing like hug, and like would just give them everything that they had. I want AI to focus on that problem for me. Just for me.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. That would be kind of a game changer on how to approach the usage of your footage.
It's kind of, I can see it kind of like a stock footage website, but with your own footage, kind of.
Like every time you're out on a shoot, let's say, and you're picking up B-roll, like the beauty of that is that you're also going to be picking B-roll for yourself, right? Like you're not, if I'm in Philadelphia shooting downtown and there's like a flock of birds flying off of Independence Hall, like I'm more bound to pick up that shot if I know that I can get that shot later. But if I'm going with the mindset, right, that I'm getting shots for this particular video, then, and it's like, it's going to be like 30 seconds or a minute long or whatever, then you start censoring, you start editing yourself beforehand. I find like I don't do it because I'm all about just shooting everything, but I find that my DPs do it. And I have to like just kind of wrestle with them, like, no, get it. Just it's like, is this going to be for the stream? Like, how can you not get it? Like, it's right there.
Yeah.
It's just like, shoot
You'll
it.
figure
I
out
don't
later.
care. Yeah.
You'll figure out
I'm
later
like,
when
hold
you
on.
will put
I'm like, no, we're getting everything. Get everything. So
it. So if you have to train AI, how you would tell them to be as a help tool for you? How you will train them? What you will tell them? How would prompt look like if you have to train them to show the footage you want?
that's a really good question. I'm figured that I think essentially what I'm saying is that if you reverse the same idea that you have about creating generative AI, right? Which is it's getting I want two people hugging, and it's going to give you two people hugging with 7 fingers, but two people hugging. I mean, it used to be 9 fingers, so like we're working in the right direction.
In the art, just disclaimer a little bit. In the art, when I used to paint anatomy of the human body, the fingers was the hardest thing to
I
paint.
agree. Hands and feet. And a sculptor friend once told me that it's because the real proportions are really hard to comprehend in your mind, just how
That's
big our
right.
hands are to
Yeah.
our faces and stuff. And so like, yeah. So I mean, but it's kind of the same principle, right? So if it can create, I'm guessing, I'm not a tech guy at all, but if it can create an image out of the language, then can it not produce a freaking hashtag out of the image, right?
Mm.
And I'm saying like there may be in the process of like actually dealing with technology, like you have to adapt yourself to it as well, right? And this is like a common thing that I would see constantly in like threads is that like DPs or like shooters or not, they would just complain about, oh, this camera it doesn't work, but they have a camera with a third party lens and another modder. You have 3 different companies, and then you're complaining because they don't seamlessly communicate with each other right when you want it. I mean, like you have to be reasonable with technology. Technology isn't particularly smart. It's really good at doing one thing, and you kind of piece that together. It would affect how you shoot. You would look for shots that are easily identifiable. You would probably clean up your frames a lot, right?
That's
Because
right.
you would learn You would learn what confuses the machine. It would be hard for Robert Altman probably to like tag his shots because he's like shooting through a fish tank, and the AI will be like, was it a fish or is it the person in the background? What am I tagging here? What am I looking at? So it is gonna it's gonna have an effect. You kind of have to embrace that in a way. That sounds like limiting, but I believe in embracing the obstruction always. Don't fight the obstruction. There's like creativity and being able to
Mm.
communicate does not depend on your budget or on a specific shot that you have in your head or even a specific line. The ability to do it is like you can circumvent all kinds of issues. There's always a creative solution. I'm all about the obstruction. Like if you tell me you cannot shoot more than 30 seconds on any shot, I'll be like, okay, great. And then I'm just gonna start thinking along those lines.
If you would provide one sentence for AI to create a prompt for him to train a, you will give them the files, right? And you want to train AI, hey AI, describe it, right? So what details you want to give to AI so he will properly describe the asset for you so you can be able easy to find it later.
I would try to break it down in order to simplify it. I would probably try to break it down into subjects and verbs and less about, and then some adjectives. But some adjectives get a little bit difficult, right?
Mm.
Like running fast. like running fast may I'm not sure how AI is going to determine whether something is, you could be running fast in slow
Mm.
motion, right? It depends. So I would
Yeah.
probably want to focus on running and then sift through what works. And if the adjective is something like blue, then that's much easier to like categorize.
Mm.
But I think at first, like my limitation is like I don't want you to find the perfect shot. I just want to be able to navigate a filing system of shots more easily.
Mm.
So if I just say like two women hugging, then that'll give me something. Two women walking. Like I would just try to limit it to like a subject and a verb, if that, or just a subject if
Mm.
I'm just looking for like profile shots or whatever, to like kind of simplify the request. But I'm very much a realist when it comes to technology. I don't foresee a lot. I look for like very pragmatic approaches to it.
Yeah, and
Um,
but it will be used for by creatives, right? So that's interesting because I was thinking as well about it. Yes, we can give to AI to like, hey, describe the certain asset, and he will put the description. But as well, another side that it has to be actually useful for a creative person who is actually looking for the file, right? And how he will
yes.
type the prompt to like, because usually when we're typing something in the search, sometimes quite often it can come up with just like general idea of something, but it's not really the thing
Yes.
you want, kinda, right?
Do you know what's a,
So
a great example of that is stock music search engines. So when you go to like stock music sites and you're like looking for music, the only way to like
yeah.
really categorize the music is through like adjectives that are just like
Mm.
really random. It's like energetic, positive, building, rousing. And like there's no, the thing that's in like in the news program music, like you may use that for something else altogether. Or you may use like a completely different type of music for a news program that you're doing. And what you do find is that you start learning the adjectives that they use, whatever the search engine is, and
Mm.
then you start typing in these bizarro adjectives yourself. You're like,
I 100% agree.
rousing.
I 100% agree, because when in the music there is like, yeah, different genres, different like adjectives and everything, and I'm just honestly when I'm clicking, I have an idea that maybe the vibe I'm looking for with this tag there,
Yes,
but it's it's when you're looking at black, you understand it's black, but when you're looking like
exactly. Yes.
energetic with the music, what it is.
Yeah, so I think I would like to avoid that in my searching for an
Mm.
image in my own library. Like energetic hug. I'm not. What the hell does that mean?
it's
Um,
it's related to abstraction, right? So it's kind of it's similar to abstraction, because abstractions gives you the certain idea or vibe, but every single person can identify it differently, kind of. So
yes.
but we want to probably in search, we want to avoid it probably to be more precise. But as well, from other side, maybe we want to be like, okay, we don't know what we're looking exactly, but we want to have some other options to give an idea for something more. I don't know.
Do you know what? You know what would be actually good? All right, now that we're brainstorming this thing. All right, so here's like two things that we could actually work on. All right. So the first thing is that you have metadata from the shot, right? So the shot knows if you were in New York or if you were in LA or in Kansas. All right. So that metadata should be able to go in. As much metadata from the shot should be able to go into your library so that you can use that as a parameter as well. So you could be like streets only in New York, right? And then the other thing is that when it comes to like actual like more abstract adjectives, which becomes a bit more of a personal filing system, right? Because they're like be able to have that. I mean, I use Lightroom for my photos. There's like 4 or 5 different qualifying systems. Like you can put a star on it, or you can put a number or a color, like whatever. And from those, I've just picked like 3 things that I do to like siphon off stuff from the roll, stuff that I'm going to work on, stuff that I do like the final piece. So have your own set of qualifiers that make sense to you and to the work that you're doing. So like in there, I think you can have whatever adjective you want because you're defining it. And when you're looking at a shot, you could literally just click on it and be like, they're happy, and then just you can click on it as you're viewing it, and you're actually helping the system continue to like enrich its filing capabilities. That would be see, like this is great. This is a really productive meeting we've had here. Like
I
figuring
like it.
out.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, we're really brainstorming and creating something. Based on this, we can definitely create something cool that will be really useful. Awesome, I love it. And Precision Strategies works with a variety of clients, from natural brands to political campaigns. How do you tailor your creative process to meet such diverse needs?
All right. I mean, I will start to say that every 2-week creative process has a 2-day version.
It's so good.
I mean, I think that we all, like all of us in the creative field, we don't want to admit it, but we all have it. We all have the 2-day version of the 2-week process. So that's kind of the first thing. I think in a lot of the work that we do, like I said, budgets are tight. And often if you're working in elections, you have a compression of having to put more material out in a shorter amount of time. And that thing is like exponential. It just keeps narrowing and narrowing to like the last weeks of the campaign. You have to be able to shoot from the hip. I think that's one thing that you don't really get in traditional advertising. You have things are more planned out, you have more time, you have more support. When you're working in politics, all of that stuff is trimmed down. And you got to be able to like get the idea and see the idea through fast. And so you get what works creatively in any communication. I don't care if it's like you're making a film or you're making like a 15-second ad on Facebook, is communication. It's getting your idea across in a compelling way. And there are like no rules for that. Like you don't need 3 cameras, and you don't need a huge budget, and you don't need CGI, and like some of the most compelling stuff is just the most minimalist stuff. Like you need a fucking idea and an execution that's thought out and clear. And clarity is your friend. All right. So don't try to say 3 things, say 1. When my back is to the wall, go back to the fundamentals. Right? Like life happens in 3 acts. A knock knock joke has 3 acts. Every script you write should have 3 acts. I don't care if it's 6 seconds long. It has an introduction, it has a development, and it has a conclusion. It's like knock knock, who's there? That's your introduction, and that's your dilemma. So who? That's a complication. That's a development. I know something, but I don't know all of it. It's like a more complicated question has arisen. And then I get the punchline, and then I'm out. That's it, right? I often find, even in creative teams now, because I don't know if it's just the amount of media that we get, the amount of compressed, cut up media that we have, is that I find like some of the younger people are really good at the vernacular, at the visual vernacular of the now, but not particularly good at the fundamentals of storytelling. And so the fundamentals is what allows you to like actually adapt to any client, to any format, because on the fundamentals, you're always telling a 3-act story with the same fundamental rules. I need to grab you. I need to link these things in a way that it's not, and then this happened, right? Therefore, so there's like these like really basic fundamental things. I used to box, and for me, it's just like, yeah, you get 4 punches. That's it. You got to build whatever you're going to build. You got 4 punches to do it.
It's coming from you. You're very creative and
Oh, yeah.
now we're like
Yeah.
talking about
I mean,
boxing.
I wasn't good. I wasn't good, but I'm Puerto Rican, so like we love boxing. And I actually started training on it just to understand it, on a visceral level. And then I walked away with a ton of metaphors about boxing as a result. But like life is a metaphor for boxing. Anyway, but yeah, I think for me that would be the answer. How do you actually adapt is just you literally go back to the fundamentals. And that kind of goes back to this whole thing about the 2-day version of the 2-week period, of the 2-week process.
Mm,
That's what you're doing. You're going back to the fundamentals because that's what
mm.
remains. When you trim your whole expansive, creative, seeking process, and you're like, I gotta land this thing in like 48 hours, you're literally fundamentals. Like, how do I land the 1-2 combination and get out of the way? That's it. That's your goal.
Yeah, it's so
But yeah.
good. And collaboration is key in agencies. How do you manage feedback loops with clients and internal teams? Do you use centralized systems for reviews and approvals?
Well, by centralized systems, we use Frame IO in general, and so like we use the review panels there to get notes from clients. Sometimes clients type into it. Sometimes they send you the stuff in an email. Sometimes they
Mm,
send you notes in a doc. The main thing is if the client notes are all over the place, I'll send it back to the internal team and I'll tell
mhm,
them to reconcile the notes. I don't want to
mm.
have to travel with 3 people on the client side and get into like all of the contradictions in their notes with each other. But I can definitely send the account people to do that for me. There's only so much that you can do because you're doing the creative work, right? So if I'm creating a video for you and you have notes on it, and I don't think that your notes are gonna work, I can't really go back to you and tell you, hey, I don't think this is gonna work. I think we have to stick with what we're doing because I'm compromised. Essentially, like from your point of view, I'm just trying to get out of doing more work, or I'm defending my own work versus your notes. So there's only so much that you can take on the creative like back and forth because your position is kind of compromised doing it and it's your work. There's notes that are there's notes that are good. I think like account teams and clients know their products very well and account teams know the clients very well. And so there's always like institutional knowledge there that I think whenever institutional knowledge is the dictating force behind a note, I kind of don't care what the note is. I'll do it because I totally
Mm.
respect the institutional knowledge of it, right? I don't fancy myself an expert in your clients or your product. I'm trying to convey something about them. And those notes are just like, oh, this language or like this thing or etc. And you're like, yeah, okay, we can do that. I can't win that argument. I just don't have the expertise. And then there's the notes that are reactionary. There's like notes that are just like, this is different from the way we did it before. And those, um, obviously, I think anyone should be like more recalcitrant about. Like, often there's nothing behind them other than the precedent that this is the way you've done it before. And this will be like where you put the camera in an interview. You don't have to shoot everyone like they're on CNN. There's no rule for that, right? I think it is important to do things with intent on the creative side. You don't want to go into a meeting with your internal team or with your client and they want to know why you did something. It's like, no, because I liked it. That's not a good, you're not going to win that argument, you know?
Oh,
Um,
because I like it. It's
yeah.
not enough for sure.
Or because this is the way I was taught in design school or whatever. Like, I'm like, that never wins in the room.
Or
Um,
the argument because I have a lot of experience and I know how it works and you don't
Oh my
know.
God! If I yes, I what is like the favorite argument of every 22-year-old designer, like in
Yeah.
an ad
Yeah.
agency. Yeah, those things they're not persuasive arguments.
Yeah.
So like one example is like where I put the camera when I'm interviewing someone, right? So I can if the interview is a cerebral thing, and I'm like they're gonna be explaining something to me, I'll usually just use like an Interrotron setup where they're looking straight at the camera and we're like looking at each other through the camera.
Yeah.
And if it's like a more personal story, I'm gonna probably start breaking up that angle and then like I'll twist their bodies in a different way so that essentially they're not totally comfortable. So they have to make a little bit of effort to make eye contact with me.
Mm.
And that little bit of effort distracts them just enough that they become looser about what they're saying. They're not just
Interesting.
thinking. And what am I trying to say? If I just distract you just a little bit, you kind of relax, and then all of a sudden this other thing opens up in you. And we're
Wow, that's
having,
interesting technique. I never heard about
yeah,
that. Interesting.
yeah. And everyone looks at me like because I'll just turn the chair and I'm like, no, your legs are gonna be pointing that way, but I want you to twist this way so like you can talk to me. And they look great. It breaks up their shoulder line.
Mm.
It's like it's awesome. But more than anything, it gives you like enough of a distraction that you're not just you don't want to be interviewing someone that's thinking about what they're saying when they're saying it. And that's
Mm.
kind of the goal, right? It's like I want you to
Yeah,
just focus on me and let's just talk.
that's awesome. And as someone with experience in both ethnographic research and storytelling, how do you blend data-driven insights with creative vision in your video projects? A little bit more advanced question, but it's kind of like
Oh, so here are, man, this is like a list of my pet peeves in the world. All right, here we go. It's amazing, like very therapeutic for me, this interview.
I'm enjoying this one for sure.
So I find, especially in politics, and this actually makes me angry. So I'm gonna have a sense of humor
Mm.
about it here, but usually I'm ranting about it. We get an incredible amount of quantitative data, and because it's easy to get, it's easy to just have a poll, but quantitative data it's like a very obtuse tool, and it does not tell you about people's motivations. It does not tell you about the baggage that they carry. It does not tell you about the filters through which they're seeing the world around them. So we end up with a perfect example is I'll say, what issues are most important to you as a voter? And then I give you 5 options: the economy, education, roads, whatever, right? And then you, within this list that is foreign to you, foreign to your life, right? Then you start picking. What should be the right thing? What makes me feel responsible? And then you start writing it. Yeah, it'll get you somewhere, but it's not really telling you much about that person. But then this data moves in, and then you get it, and then you're like,
Mm.
education. They care a lot about education. And then you start talking about education, and your ads start tanking, and you don't understand why. And it's because we're not really looking beyond the quantitative data, and you have to. I'm a
Mm.
big believer in qualitative data. I get more from, or just as much, let's say, because I don't want like just shit on polling and surveys, but I get just as much from talking to 5 people that are my targets
Mm.
and having a conversation about them and being able to actually have a deeper conversation with each one of them than I get from surveying 5,000 people in the state. And I've
Interesting.
proven it, right? I've run programs where we do qualitative research to figure out a messaging line where there is no messaging line that works and fine, because you're not going at it in a straight line. We have a serious problem of there's a lack of interpretation of data in politics.
Hmm.
Um, and we look at, and I've seen this done where you're going to write an ad and somebody will tell you, look, this word pulled really well, so just use that word in the ad. Right? So no one asked why it's polling well. Like, why are people responding to it? Right? It's like, what is the bias here? It's no one's. It's just take that, because it's just you're like an assembly line. It's just, we got it, and then you like it and you move it on, and it's created a whirlwind of content that's not compelling. And I have a friend who once told me, which I cannot take credit for this line because I use it all the time, that there's only 2 types of content online: there's memorable and there's everything else. I think in politics, for sure, I find too much contentment in content that ends up being just noise. It's just part of the noise.
Mm.
You're using the same trite phrases, and clearly you see that the audiences are starting to react to it, right? Like, you cannot serve me the same language year after year, election after election, and expect to find it compelling every time.
Yeah.
We don't do a good job of listening to audiences. We think of them as numbers. They're not. We think of them as political beings. They're not. Human beings are not political animals. by nature.
Yeah.
We're driven by other things, not not lofty philosophy. Maybe in ancient Athens there were 30 guys who were led by and they did most of the writing, so that's our impression of it. But most people are not. Like, you're dealing with really basic issues. Your priorities are very personal. I think we're drowning right now in quantitative data, and I don't think that it's improving our ability to communicate and connect.
Wow, that's true.
Wow,
Because
that got dark in a hurry.
I mean, it's awesome conversation. We shared a lot of wisdom and knowledge. I enjoyed a lot of this. I hope we can sit and talk more and like more often. When people can learn about you, find you on the internet, connect with you, could you please share the some channels of communication with you?
I mean, you can see like our work. I think probably the best way is to like just go to LinkedIn and follow Precision Strategies, and that's probably like the best place to see what we're up to and what we're working on, etc. I have a website, but it's just my portfolio. I think you see the work that we're doing. I think the LinkedIn is probably like the best place to find us and see what we're up to.
Awesome.
Listen, I thank you. I really kind of mean it. This was kind of therapeutic.
I enjoyed this conversation a lot. So, Juan, thank you so much for joining the podcast, and I hope to speak with you more often.
Thank you, man. Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Damn Surge podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, share it with your friends, and follow us on social media. It's powered by SRG Plus, the ultimate digital asset management app. Visit srgplus.com to learn more.